Your life is a lie. Every smile you fake, every word you censor, every achievement you chase, it is not yours. The person you have been pretending to be is dead. And you are walking around pretending nothing has changed, pretending that everything is fine. But here's the truth nobody wants to say: the life you are living is slowly murdering your soul. That empty, restless, anxious feeling gnawing at you every night. That's not weakness. That is your true self screaming for release. And if you continue to ignore it, it will not whisper forever. One day, it will explode, and the world you've built on lies will shatter around you. Right now, your soul is screaming, and if you refuse to listen, it will find a way to make you pay. The false life, the mask, the act you cling to, it is dead. You are standing over its grave, and the only way forward is brutal honesty. Stop pretending, or continue to die inside. Today, we confront this reality. I will show you 5 undeniable truths about the person you pretend to be, and why your soul will not and cannot stay silent any longer. Every day, millions of people move through the world wearing masks. They carry the masks of the obedient employee, the dutiful child, the perfect parent, the charming friend, the ambitious professional. These masks are not simple accessories. They are carefully constructed prisons. At first, they may appear as shields, protecting us from judgment, rejection, or failure. They allow us to navigate the expectations of society, family, and peers. But the deeper truth is far darker. Masks are not neutral. They demand constant energy to maintain, relentless conformity to survive, and a silence that suffocates the yearnings of the soul. Every smile we force, every word we censor, every posture we adopt to appear acceptable, chips away at the core of who we truly are. I once observed a woman who appeared, to all who knew her, to have everything. She was a top executive, commanding respect, admiration, and influence in her professional world. Her home was orderly, her life seemingly perfect, her achievements enviable. Yet every Sunday night, a shadow would descend upon her. Anxiety gripped her chest like a vice. Sleep became restless. Her mind, so brilliant during the day, was now a battlefield of unrest. It was not the pressures of work alone that haunted her. It was the life she had abandoned to fit a role she did not truly belong to. Her passion for painting, a love that had once ignited her spirit, had been buried decades ago under the weight of what mattered. She had succeeded by the standards of others, but inside, her soul was starving. This is the tragedy of the mask. It does not merely hide us from the world, it slowly erodes the self that wears it. The persona we craft to gain approval or avoid conflict gradually becomes a cage, invisible yet impenetrable, locking away our deepest desires, our authentic impulses, and our unspoken truths. The longer we inhabit this false identity, the more subtle and insidious the damage becomes. At first, it may manifest as fatigue, a quiet whisper of dissatisfaction that we can ignore. But soon it grows louder. Anxiety, chronic stress, depression, even physical illness may rise from the neglected, suppressed self. The soul has a way of speaking when the mind refuses to listen. It communicates through discomfort, through a persistent sense of incompleteness, through the slow erosion of vitality. The danger lies in the seeming success of the mask. It can deceive us into believing that everything is fine because the external world applauds us. People commend our diligence, admire our composure, envy our accomplishments. But what the world sees is a reflection of expectation, not essence. Beneath that carefully curated exterior, the soul is withering. The human psyche is not meant to exist merely in performance or pretense. It craves authenticity. The longing for genuine expression, for alignment with one's inner truth, cannot be indefinitely ignored. It will insist upon recognition, often through discomfort so profound that it cannot be overlooked. Consider the subtle ways this manifests in daily life. A successful professional may find themselves unable to sleep, haunted by a sense of emptiness that no promotion, no accolade, no external validation can fill. A parent may feel a quiet resentment for the sacrifices made in the name of duty, yearning for the personal dreams they once nurtured. A friend may feel isolated, sensing that their laughter and charm are hollow, masking an inner void of unexpressed emotion. In all these cases, the soul is signaling that something essential has been abandoned. It is calling for reintegration, for honesty, for the courage to step away from the mask that no longer serves life, but instead diminishes it. The brutal truth is that maintaining a persona that is not ours is not sustainable. The longer we continue to perform this lie, the more our soul will insist on being heard. The signals are clear: fatigue that seeps into every fiber of being, anxiety that strikes without cause, illness that emerges where there was once health. These are not random misfortunes. They are the body and spirit speaking in unison, demanding attention. They are the cries of the self, reminding us that life cannot thrive under a falsehood indefinitely. Listening to these signals requires courage. It demands that we confront the discomfort of our own truth, acknowledge the desires we have suppressed, and face the frightening uncertainty of stepping out of conformity. It asks us to reclaim the parts of ourselves long abandoned for approval, comfort, or fear of rejection. But it is only through this confrontation that we can restore vitality, find genuine satisfaction, and live a life that resonates with the soul. The mask may have protected us, but in the end, it is killing us from the inside. The choice is stark: continue to wear it and slowly wither, or tear it away and finally breathe the air of authenticity. Many people move through life as if guided by an invisible autopilot, believing that they are navigating their own journey, when in truth they are being carried by currents they neither chose nor control. From the moment we are socialized into the expectations of family, school, and society, we are taught to follow paths laid out for us, to measure ourselves by the accomplishments that others value, and to derive our sense of worth from approval rather than inner truth. At first, this seems practical, even necessary. We achieve, we conform, we succeed, or so it seems. Yet beneath the surface of this apparent order, a quiet unrest begins to fester unnoticed, because the very routines that sustain our external life obscure the cries of the inner self. Autopilot living is subtle, and it is insidious. It masquerades as stability and reliability, convincing us that we are disciplined, responsible, and competent. But the inner life, the soul, is not satisfied with competence alone. It is not nourished by achievement divorced from meaning. When we pursue goals that were never truly ours, when we measure our value by the praise of others, when we organize our days around tasks dictated by expectation rather than desire, we create a life that appears controlled but is hollow at its core. The mind may feel in command, but the soul is restless, whispering of paths unexplored, of talents unexpressed, of passions abandoned. Research confirms this quiet suffering. Studies repeatedly show that people who prioritize external validation or the expectations of others over their own values are significantly more likely to experience anxiety, depression, and a pervasive sense of emptiness. It is as though the psyche recognizes the incongruence between outward action and inward truth, and when the disconnect grows too great, it manifests as mental and emotional disturbance. The autopilot mind believes it is secure in routines, but the soul, which cannot be deceived, grows restless, sometimes imperceptibly, sometimes in a torrent of dissatisfaction, until it can no longer be ignored. I once knew a man whose life appeared, to the outside observer, to be inviolable. He climbed the corporate ladder with precision, admired by colleagues and rewarded by promotions. Yet he carried a constant, gnawing emptiness. Every achievement felt fleeting, every milestone hollow. He believed he was living, yet the very structure of his life, the schedules, the obligations, the relentless pursuit of prestige, was strangling him from within. Then, one year, he took a sabbatical alone to travel and reflect. In the quiet of unfamiliar landscapes, free from expectations and deadlines, he rediscovered a love for writing and philosophy that had lain dormant for decades. The pause, the stillness, the conscious step away from the autopilot illuminated the truth. He had been living a borrowed life, and only by reconnecting with his own passions did he feel the stirrings of authentic vitality. The soul cannot thrive on autopilot. It demands conscious choice, courage, and deliberate engagement with life. It calls for the willingness to stop following prescribed routes and instead confront the discomfort of uncertainty, of risk, of individual authenticity. Autopilot offers safety, predictability, and the illusion of control, yet it kills the essential spark of living. To truly live, one must awaken to the choices that shape one's own life, not those imposed by expectation. One must cultivate awareness, discernment, and the courage to act in alignment with one's deepest values, even when doing so threatens the comfort of the familiar. Autopilot living is, in essence, a slow betrayal of the self. It teaches us that obedience and achievement are life, when in reality, life demands engagement with the unknown, the unpredictable, the uncomfortable. It demands the conscious presence of the self in every thought, word, and action. When we awaken from autopilot, we begin to notice the subtle rhythms of our desires, the persistent signals of our creative impulses, the quiet urgings that call us to step into our own lives rather than the lives of others. Every choice becomes a question. Does this action honor my truth, or does it perpetuate the illusion of control? Does it feed the soul, or merely satisfy expectation? The path away from autopilot is neither easy nor comfortable. It requires vigilance, self-honesty, and the courage to embrace uncertainty. But it is the only path that leads to a life that is lived rather than endured. When we release the habit of pretending that external measures define us, when we begin to consciously choose our directions, to honor our passions, and to pursue what truly excites and fulfills us, the restless stirrings of the soul transform into joy, purpose, and vitality. The autopilot mind may resist, the familiar routines may seem safer, but the soul demands awakening. It insists that we step fully into the life that is ours, no longer borrowed, no longer guided by the expectations of others, but fully and courageously our own. Pretending to be someone else is never neutral. Every choice we make to suppress who we truly are, every compromise we make to fit into expectation, every act of pretense casts a shadow over the psyche, a shadow that grows heavier with each passing day. The denial of the self is not a passive act. It is an active force that amplifies inner conflict, that gradually erodes the harmony between what we feel and what we express. This shadow, once small and subtle, begins to dominate the corners of our consciousness, whispering in restless moments, stirring unease in the quiet of night, and manifesting as tension, anxiety, or dissatisfaction that seems to have no clear origin. It is a darkness that is self-created, yet it becomes terrifyingly real, for it is born from the very refusal to acknowledge one's own truth. I think of a young man I once knew, a musician whose heart and soul once poured themselves freely into music, who could lose himself in melodies that seemed to emerge from the stars themselves. But family pressure dictated a different path. Be practical, they said, choose security, stability, prestige. And so he abandoned the piano, the compositions, the late-night rehearsals, and the dream of stages filled with light and sound. He studied law, followed a disciplined routine, climbed the ladder, and became financially secure. From the outside, his life appeared exemplary. Yet inside, he was bankrupt, not in material terms, but in the currency of the soul. The music that once defined him had been silenced, replaced by routine, expectation, and the sterile comfort of external approval. Years passed. The avoidance had worked, or so it seemed. And then one day, as he walked down a city street, he heard the distant notes of a piano being played by an old friend. It was a melody that he knew, one he had composed himself years ago, now echoed back to him with haunting clarity. In that moment, something inside him cracked. The longing he had buried, the joy he had sacrificed, erupted in a wave so intense that it overwhelmed him. He wept on the sidewalk, struck by the realization that the life he had been living was not his own, that every attempt to avoid his true self had only deepened the pain. His soul, in its relentless wisdom, had forced him to confront the truth he had been running from. It was painful, shocking, and unavoidable, yet it was necessary. Avoidance does not protect us, it merely postpones the reckoning. Pain is not punishment, it is the universe's language, its way of compelling us toward authenticity. Suffering speaks when reason and comfort have failed, when the mind has rationalized away every instinct and intuition that calls us home to ourselves. It is harsh because it demands confrontation. It is merciful because it does not allow us to continue living a lie indefinitely. Every ache, every restlessness, every sense of emptiness is a teacher in disguise, insisting that we stop pretending, that we honor the parts of ourselves we have neglected, that we reclaim the life that belongs to us by right of our own being. The shadow created by avoidance is deceptive in its subtlety. It whispers that conformity is safety, that compromise is protection, that silence is wisdom. But the more we listen to these whispers, the more it tightens its grip. Our creativity, our passions, our capacity for deep connection, all the expressions that make life vibrant, become stifled. We may fill our days with accomplishments, accolades, and routines, yet feel an internal void that no external success can fill. This is the evidence of a soul at war with itself, a life at war with its own authenticity. The lesson here is uncompromising. The avoidance of truth magnifies pain. The longer we refuse to face ourselves, the more inevitable and profound the reckoning becomes. The soul does not allow indifference. It insists on engagement. Confronting our truth is not an optional exercise. It is the very condition of life lived fully. The pain of awakening is temporary. The cost of continued avoidance is a slow, unrelenting decay of the spirit. To listen to the soul, to acknowledge its cries, to act in accordance with what one truly desires, is to step into freedom, to reclaim vitality, and to transform suffering into a guiding light toward authenticity. Change is never gentle. It does not arrive with polite suggestions or gradual nudges. When the soul calls for transformation, it does so with a force that is often shocking, disorienting, and unavoidable. The voice of the inner self rarely whispers. It screams. It disrupts the routines we have grown comfortable with, challenges the identities we have carefully constructed, and sometimes shatters the entire world we have known. This is not a matter of fear, mongering, or pessimism. It is simply the nature of growth. Destruction and creation are two sides of the same coin. Without one, the other cannot exist. The familiar structures, the roles we cling to, the lives we have built to satisfy expectation, they are not inherently wrong, but when they prevent us from being fully ourselves, they become prisons. And the breaking of these prisons is rarely gentle. Consider the story of a woman who once walked in the shadows of despair, whose life seemed trapped in a cycle of rejection, poverty, and hopelessness. Her name is familiar to the world: J.K. Rowling. She faced innumerable failures, each manuscript rejected, each opportunity closed, each dream seemingly slipping through her fingers. She was, by every conventional measure, struggling. Yet beneath the surface of this despair, there was a force that would not be silenced, a creative impulse that demanded recognition. Every rejection, every hardship, was not merely a barrier but a tool, forcing her to release a previous identity, struggling single mother, tentative dreamer, and confront the authentic self she had long neglected. The destruction of her old life, the painful unmaking of her familiar world, cleared space for the emergence of a reality that was genuinely hers. The Harry Potter she created was not simply a story. It was the crystallization of a soul that refused to be silenced, a life reborn from the wreckage of what no longer served her. The process of change is brutal precisely because it demands honesty, courage, and the willingness to face the unknown. When the soul demands transformation, it does not permit excuses, delay, or compromise. It calls for a confrontation with all that is false, all that is stagnant, and all that has been clung to out of fear. The masks we wear, the routines we follow, the expectations we meet at the expense of our own truth, all these are exposed in the light of transformation. The familiar comforts, once a refuge, now feel suffocating. The identity we have clung to, which provided a sense of security, now feels hollow. And the only path forward is to surrender, to let go, and to embrace the uncertainty of becoming. This brutality is not cruelty, it is mercy. The alternative to change is not safety, it is continued decay. A life lived in pretense, in denial, in avoidance, eventually becomes a slow erosion of the spirit. The soul's unrest is not meant to torment, it is a guide, pointing us toward what is real, what is vital, what is necessary for our growth. Transformation forces us to face our shadows, to confront the limitations we have imposed upon ourselves, and to discard what no longer aligns with the truth of our being. In this sense, destruction is not the enemy of life, but its essential precursor. Without the breaking of the old, the new cannot emerge. Without surrendering what is false, the authentic self cannot step forward. Every act of change, no matter how small, requires courage. The mind may resist, clinging to familiar patterns, familiar pain, and the illusion of control. The heart may tremble at the uncertainty ahead, and yet, the soul's call is insistent. It does not negotiate, it does not plead, it demands that we act. This is why transformation feels so brutal. It forces us to confront the disparity between who we are pretending to be and who we truly are. It strips away illusions, disassembles comfortable lies, and leaves us exposed to the raw, unvarnished truth of ourselves. And yet, it is in this exposure, in this confrontation, that life regains its vitality, its clarity, and its authenticity. Change is terrifying because it dismantles everything we have relied upon. But it is also liberating because it clears the path for the life that is truly ours. The scream of the soul is brutal because only in breaking the false self can the authentic self emerge. The pain of transformation is a threshold, a necessary crucible through which we must pass. Those who embrace it, who listen to the call, who confront the chaos within, are the ones who step into the fullness of their existence. The old must be destroyed to make way for the new, and in that destruction lies the miracle of rebirth, the chance to live a life that is not borrowed, not performed, but deeply, undeniably real. The soul is never silent, though we often lie as though it is. We walk through life assuming that the noises of the mind, the pressures of the world, and the expectations of others are the sum of existence, failing to recognize that beneath all of this, there is a deeper, insistent voice, one that has always been present, quietly guiding, nudging, even screaming when ignored. This voice is not judgmental or punitive. It is a compass, a source of profound wisdom, pointing us toward authenticity and fulfillment. Every impulse we have ignored, every longing we have denied, every discomfort we have tried to suppress is not a flaw, a weakness, or a mistake. It is a signal, a coded message from the deepest part of ourselves telling us the path we were meant to take. Too often, we misinterpret these signals. We call them restlessness, dissatisfaction, boredom, or anxiety. We try to quiet them with distractions, routines, or approval from others. But the truth is that these impulses are not problems to be solved. They are invitations. They are the soul's way of reminding us that the life we are living may not be the life we were meant to live, that the self we are presenting to the world may not be the self we were born to be. And the longer we ignore these messages, the louder they become. The soul has a way of insisting on recognition, often through discomfort that cannot be ignored, until we finally take notice and act. Consider the story of a woman I once knew, a professional in the marketing industry. She had a stable career, a respectable position, and a life that appeared orderly and successful. Yet internally, she felt unfulfilled, restless, as if a vital part of herself had been left behind somewhere along the way. She began to notice recurring thoughts, subtle longings that had been dismissed for years, the desire to help others, the memory of joy she had felt as a child when engaged in acts of service, the quiet sense that her current life was misaligned with who she truly was. At first, she resisted these impulses, convincing herself that she could not afford to change, that the world would judge her, that the risk was too great. Yet the voice of her soul would not be silenced. She began journaling, writing honestly about her fears, desires, and the moments when she felt most alive. In this reflection, she uncovered a truth she had long buried. Her calling was not in marketing, but in social work. The realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. To act upon it would mean leaving the security of a steady paycheck, the recognition of peers, and the familiar routines she had depended on for so long. The shift was socially uncomfortable, financially risky, and personally frightening. Yet, the pull of authenticity was stronger than her fear. She took the steps she could, small but deliberate, toward a life aligned with her inner truth. And as she did, something remarkable happened. The restlessness faded, replaced by a sense of purpose and aliveness she had never experienced. For the first time, she felt fully herself, fully present, and fully alive. The soul had not punished her for past neglect. It had illuminated the way forward. This story exemplifies a universal truth. The soul does not exist to punish us for our errors or omissions. It does not speak to instill guilt or shame. Its function is far more profound. It guides, illuminates, and calls us to life that is real, vital, and aligned with our deepest being. Every impulse we feel, every discomfort that stirs within us, every persistent longing is a signpost pointing to the direction in which we must move. The courage required is not to silence fear, but to move despite it, not to know the outcome in advance, but to trust in the wisdom of the self that has been listening all along. Acting on the guidance of the soul does not require a complete overhaul at once. It begins with small, deliberate choices, speaking truthfully, pursuing activities that ignite passion, noticing and honoring the things that bring joy. Each act of alignment strengthens the self, reinforcing the connection between our inner truth and our outward life. Over time, these choices accumulate, creating momentum, reshaping reality, and opening the path toward freedom. The soul's voice is persistent, patient, and wise, waiting only for the courage to listen and the willingness to respond. The invitation is clear: pay attention, trust what rises from within, and take courageous steps. Your soul is not silent because it wishes to punish you. It is silent no longer because it insists that you live authentically. Every step toward alignment, every act of bravery in pursuing your truth, strengthens your being and brings you closer to the life you were meant to live. The soul is not a distant, abstract concept. It is the essential, guiding force within you, always pointing the way forward, always ready to lead you into the light of your own authentic existence. The person you pretend to be is dead. Your soul will not let you ignore it forever. Every ache, every restlessness, every whisper of dissatisfaction is a sacred call to awaken. The road ahead is terrifying, but it is the only way to reclaim your life. Step into your authenticity. Listen to the brutal truths within yourself. Shed the mask. Face the fear, and live a life that your soul can finally recognize as its own. You are not meant to continue pretending. You are meant to rise.